next guest and our very distinguished guest is Tan Sri Razali Ismail. Over 35 years of service with a Malaysian diplomatic service he has behind him. And it's very impressive, his career. Just listen. He was ambassador to Poland, ambassador to the German Democratic Republic, ambassador to Czechoslovakia, ambassador to Hungary, and if that was not enough, he was High Commissioner to India, Deputy Secretary General and permanent representative to the United Nations. And if that was not enough, at the UN he has served as chairman of the Group of 77, president of the UN Security Council, chairman of the Commission on Sustainable Development, president of the United Nations General Assembly. And he was not tired, so recently he was appointed chairman of the Global Movement of Moderates Foundation. May I welcome with you with a warm applause our next guest.
Thank you. Salam sejahtera in my language. Very happy to be invited. My view is that I was invited to try to discuss with you issues related to unity in diversity and how we could exchange views, question and answers, how we can find ways to concretize this concept of unity in diversity, exchanging experiences at the very least. I welcome you all to ask me any kind of questions after my short little address. But first I want to say that, that what I've heard this morning are very stirring stuff. But the subject of unity in diversity is so broad that it is easier to deal with it in speeches than to deal with it in question and answer panels, to discuss things in actuality. It is very inspiring to hear of one religion under God and all of us committed in unity and diversity to make sure that this comes about as a human quest and pursuit. But world has another aspect of it. You have to deal with the reality of how things are. And when you try to operationalize some of the things that have been mentioned this morning, then you come up against some very difficult problems. I think in everything that we do, we are saddled with our worldview and our national consciousness. In many cases, the worldview, the aspirations, do not gel with whatever nation states want to do. If you are interested in dealing with it, I can add you another dimension. More than the worldview, together with the worldview and the national positions of states, are also the need of the planet. Then you add in also the people who are not just Malaysians or Indonesians or Nigerians, but people who are over years who belong to communities who are used to a certain kind of life, certain preoccupation, and who are now having a lot of problems being locked in by states, as it were, not being able to do the things that they were used to do before. You have the Penans in my part of the world, you have the Tuaregs in North Africa, you have all sorts of people. And for all these things, there is no answer as yet what to do. Governments, of course, are accountable. Governments should have done better. But governments take into account who are the people they are that will vote them in. and they take into account usually the mainstream of what people feel. The question is there enough compassion in governments and people to deal with the people who are marginalized? This is very important. In my part of the world, we have done very well over 50, 60 years, each of the countries of ASEAN, to have achieved a level of economic progress and development and quality of life that rivals others, even better than others perhaps. But some things we have not been able to do. Despite that, there are still pockets of marginalized people in parts of Southeast Asia. People who still live in contaminated lands, drink polluted water. Your theories, your economic theories and your good intentions have not been able to help. So I would implore on the people today here to take all these things into account. We cannot have a glorious set of community living under one God if we do not have something to say to help these people who are still living under abject poverty, who are still repressed by political violence. I would enjoin that we carry with us that residual responsibility as a human being. Whether we come from Latin America, we come from Asia, we carry that residual responsibility that we will not forget these people. For us in Southeast Asia, it's a very big proposition. We cannot actually interfere with what nation states do, but the problems are in this country or that country. But because ASEAN respects very strongly the idea of sovereignty and non-interference, ASEAN has only to influence in a different way to get certain things done. Because we are very close together, these 5 countries, it is possible to begin to make an impact, to try to think not just for Malaysians, but for Indonesians, for Cambodians, and all sorts of them. So be able to make that difference. So slowly, steadily, these things are beginning to happen. The marginalized people of this area are beginning to have a better sense of expectation, hope. But there is another problem in Southeast Asia. The movement of people, migrant races, trafficking in human and women and children. For every time a government does something, there is the underworld that tries to do even better than governments. So people are trafficked, put into prostitution, people are forced to bear arms, all sorts of things that are happening. We have the best, most sophisticated kind of the underworld in this part of the world. Perhaps you may think of this as a Hollywood notion, but it is not. It is for real. When I was doing work for the UN in Myanmar, I was made to be aware of how marginalized certain pockets of people were in certain parts of Myanmar because the authority of the state was not there and they had to depend on these underworld arrangements. So we have to give thought to all that. So we can go on and on talking about shared values, but shared values among the people who are there, who are prosperous. We should be thinking in terms of shared values among the people who are not prosperous. Why don't we say we make sure that certain medicines for diseases are not only meant for the people who can afford it, but we allow for generic medicine to be made available to everybody, that then medicine can be cheap for everybody. So there are these things that must prick our conscience. I may sound a bit in a state of despair, but I think there is many things that we would have to do. And now I've come to the conclusion of the sort that governments are not enough. If you see what governments have done over the years, they have done remarkably well, but a lot of the work is unfinished. I attended a meeting on environmental law in Germany a month ago. This was a get-together of professors and academicians, and I was the only one that was underqualified. But nevertheless, I was there. And it is obvious that, according to them, that 50% of their treaties that have been negotiated and agreed to and ratified by parliaments have not been properly implemented, at least 50%. It is obvious to them that there is no other way to go. So if you begin to depend only on governments coming together to work out all these serious environmental problems by agreeing to new environmental laws, you have a long way to come. So some of us have come to the conclusion that we should agitate, force from the shop floor upwards, people to insist that their community, the NGOs, agitate even further for voluntary, unilateral acceptance of environmental laws. This is being done in Europe, but Europe is not Asia. Europe is based on legalistic foundations. In Asia, it is a bit more complicated than that. But nevertheless, it has to be done. It has to be done in Nigeria, in Africa, Latin America, in several other places. The ability of governments to expand energy and politics in dealing with these things are rather limited at this moment. So I was interested in looking at the ex-heads of governments making all these declarations. I would hope that they would take this into account and build things from the shop floor to get things done. Leadership, world leadership, one of the questions they were asked in Davos 2 years ago was the dearth of good world leadership. For some reason, it is our karma perhaps to be able to deal with world leadership that are really not of the right caliber. Whatever did we do to deserve a guy like Bush? So we have to begin to ask these questions. Are our leaders up to the mark in dealing not just with national questions, but also with global responsibilities? I am not sure I can be positive in that answer. We extol our leadership to the point that we almost make demigods out of them. But sometimes we make the mistake of not making them accountable, particularly on the corruption of power and corruption of material wealth. People are too believing. People are like sheep. They follow ideas. Even one of the best statesmen in the world, Julius Nyerere, talked about African socialism. And for a long while, the people in Africa, particularly in his state, Tanzania, believed that was possible. But that idea impoverished a lot of Tanzania and Tanganyika. And it was only much later that he recanted and he took out African socialism. So there are many things that we expect from our leaders, but there are many things that we should not expect from our leaders. Make them accountable every step of the way. Finally, my area of Southeast Asia. This is a wonderful anthropological paradise. There's at least 100 different communities in this area. But the governments are strict, nationally driven governments that consider things in the context of their own governmental entity. We are going to be a community by 2014, 2015. I think ASEAN. And there is a drive in modernization to bring about a common concept of even culture. I think this would be a disastrous mistake to think that we can try to homogenize culture in Southeast Asia. Government officials should take into account that in an attempt to homogenize many things, including economics, which is possible, it would be dangerous to try to homogenize culture, the whole hybrid and canvas of tapestry of culture in this part of the world. So I leave you with this thought. I'm totally supportive of what Dr. Moon was trying to say just now, but I'm throwing to you all the problems and obstacles along the way. Thank you very much.